Hello, Toby Jup 7, Riley, Z, welcome back in the +3. Good old +3 Z. Dynamite. Saw your free agent post. Oh, that's going well. Oh, Pac. Aquatic Vanguard. Okay. Then someone on +3 is getting ratioed every 3 minutes. It sounds about right. There's nothing wrong with getting ratioed. Getting ratio is healthy. Thank you for the subscription, Zon Inc. of Destiny Troops. You were up very early today. Were you that excited to see your results? You were up. Wow. We'll talk a little bit about +3 stuff today. A little bit. There's like a gazillion and a half things that happened over the past week that need attention as well. A lot of silly stuff happening. Woke up because you're freezing. It's 60 degrees where I'm at. It is fall. Eventually it was going to start acting like fall. I know I've been wearing shorts around most Thanksgivings lately. I can't complain like that. 40? Bach would like that. I don't think I'm ready for cold weather just yet. Pokemon episode? Possibly. I know there are some Pokemon Showdown fans in chat. Pokemon Showdown interview. It so happens to include a person involved in Pokemon Showdown. Hello, Falco. Oh, Hoeen, you are on time. You are right on time. Slightly early. You won't have to catch the VOD on YouTube later. Better late than never, but never late is better. Penguit got voted out of Plus One. I didn't even know they were still active in the game. To be in Plus One. Popcast. This is what you listen to while you clean your dishes. All right, fair enough. I listen to the Dan Patrick Show when I clean my dishes, or the segmented clips of the Dan Patrick Show, I should say. Popcast while you cook. You know, I asked this on a episode, like a couple episodes ago. It's like, how many people don't actually watch the podcast but just listen to it? And I think about 3 or 4 people on YouTube commented like, hey, all I do is just listen to you. It's like, that's awesome. That's great. This originally intended to just be something you listen to. If you look at like episode 1, 2, and 3, I think it was just some crappy logo on the overlay. That's it. But now I got my face up here, and the lovely and talented Carrot has made me this overlay, and got some more goodies in the works coming down the pipe soon. So we're doing a lot to make this a show that can be enjoyed by your eyes and your ears. But I appreciate those of you that just listen with your just absorb my content with your ears. Those views count as well, even though you're not technically viewing. Those the listens count. I have a lot of important things to say, and the information I spew needs to be heard by the masses, so however it is that you consume my content, like a nice juicy piece of steak is good. I'm trying to save this planet through competitive Splatoon. Face is just a blessing. You know what? If I find out more people listen to the podcast than actually watch it, I'll stop putting effort into actually trimming my face. We'll just see, and getting haircut. I'll just let everything go wild and see what happens. Episode 85 is just gonna be caveman pop gun. See how that works out. Won't be much different from actual pumpkin. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify. While you're complaining about the Nintendo Online expansion pack being $50 a year, or $80 if you're doing the family plan thing, making plans to return to your Animal Crossing island after a 6-month hiatus, waiting patiently for your banned from low ink certificate to arrive in the mail, whatever it is that you're doing right now, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Well, it's been a good week. You know, there's a lot of times where I come into a podcast on like a Sunday night right before I go live on Monday, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about. Sometimes it gets pretty scary and a little unnerving to think that, like, wow, there's nothing to talk about, and I need to not so much create things to talk about, but dig deep into think, like, what are conversations we should be having that nobody's talking about. Well, this is not one of those weeks. This is one of those weeks where there's too much to talk about. Some of it being good, some of it being bad, some of it being, whatever. We'll mention it at some point. But this is, it's sometimes the episodes write themselves, and this week proved to be one of those weeks where I'm just sitting here on Thursday night, sipping my water and just being like, yep, I already got the entire podcast written, and it's not even Friday yet. That's an awesome feeling. So shout outs to all of you on Twitter that are morons, i.e. Nintendo, for helping create content for the podcast here. So we'll get into that stuff. First off, news. It's Low Ink Week, baby. Your favorite tournament and mine as well is going on this upcoming weekend. Make sure, now, I say this every single Low Ink week, and it's a warning to all of you that want to play in Low Ink, and there's always that one person who doesn't heed my warning and ends up in the cold, and we all make fun of that person. If you want to play in Low Ink, you should register today, right now. Don't wait for the deadline to end. Don't wait till the last minute to try to find a pickup team. If you're going to do a pickup, find your teammates now. If you want to sub into this tournament, put in your sub application now. Register now. Give RTOs as much time as possible to look into you and verify who you are, so that you can actually be eligible to play in Low Ink. If you wait to the last minute, that is when you start getting DMs from me and JPEG that are the angry, gripey, you need to send us more information or we're kicking your team out kind of DMs that I don't like sending out, but I will if it means I have to. Don't be that guy. Register now. Put in your exemption requests now. I've seen some people in there, and I'm not going to let you know because it's not my job to let you know, but I've seen some people who have signed up who do need an exemption request. If you don't put one in, it's not going to be a fun Friday for you. So do all of your administrative stuff now, or you will be that person in help desk Friday night who is getting laughed at secretly for asking, ooh, can you let me in? Even though I didn't know the registration closes. There's no excuse. You guys had a month. Sign up for Low Ink, you idiots. If you don't make it for Low Ink, LSL 16 is right around the corner, November the 6th on a Saturday. Haven't looked yet recently to see how many teams sign up for that one, but it looks like it should be a good tournament. As always, LSL is trending in the right direction, and I got a sneak peek of what the future overlays for that tournament are going to look like, and yikes! IPL is going to be, IPL does look good, but Little Squid League's about to embarrass a lot of the other tournaments as far as what their overlays look like compared to what Little Squid League is about to be doing. Little Squid League looks sexy, bro. I'm just going to tell you that. Today, we're going to be chatting with Hoeen Hero, the org head, or I guess just to say one of the org heads for Inkling Performance Labs. This was a pre-recorded interview, but I fixed the overlays to make it seem so natural. You guys are going to have no idea that interview actually took place on Wednesday and not happened live right before your faces. It's that good. I'm even wearing the same shirt. You'll never tell the difference. Also, we're going to be recapping everything that happened in the week. All the tournaments that got announced, Ludi, the Spawn Point thing, Beta's tournaments, and recapping some of the other tournaments that happened the past week as well. All a part of a very lengthy, heavy weekly recap. But first, if you're making a list of the worst tournament organizations that we have in competitive Splatoon, well, that's a pretty negative thing for you to be doing. Isn't there some other better way that you can use your time here? But if you do that list, the org, the single tournament, whatever you want to call it, at the very top of the list has to be Nintendo. The level of absurdity that they are pulling out with every single thing that they do in competitive Splatoon is unmatched by anything that we have in this scene. Anything. I mean, I've said on here 78 episodes now of the podcast. There has been some times where I've called out other tournaments, other orgs for being bad and for making horribly stupid decisions. Not so much to make fun of them, but as like a warning to other TOs and tournaments. Don't make the same mistakes that this team or that these people just did. All of them could give a lecture to Nintendo about how to actually run tournaments. It's embarrassing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let's get you kind of caught up to speed, because this is an extra episode of a season that ended a couple of months ago. This is your bonus, your OVA episode of the Nintendo tournaments, and let's give you a little bit of a refresher. Back over the summer, Nintendo announced 4 tournaments for the United States only. One including each tournament focused on just all of the 4 modes, except for Clam Blitz got replaced by Turf War for some reason. Okay, whatever. Very strict rules were put in place for this tournament. I think it had to do with the prizes that were kind of put in place, and they didn't want people like switching up too many things to make it all too confusing for them. Because we found out we have to make everything extremely simple for Nintendo, or else they're gonna get really confused or just flat out not care. Regardless, one of the main rules for this tournament series is that you couldn't use a different player throughout the entirety of the tournament series. So if you played in the first tournament with Rainmaker with 5 players on your team, you are married to those 4 other players for the rest of the series. You can't leave that team and go join another one in a different tournament. You were locked in. That roster 5 was locked in and could not change. Important. Look, I understand why that rule is in place. Again, it had to do probably with the prizes. You're not winning like cash prizes here. You're winning more like physical prizes, a gaming chair, backpack, pin set, all that stuff. Which probably was why it was United States only, so that there was no like distribution. Like they didn't want to get caught up in sending things to Shaq over in Canada, or anyone south of the United States border. Maybe that, I'm sure that's probably why it was United States only. It was because of the prizes. And they probably didn't want people winning multiple sets of prizes as well, is why they were like, you got to be stuck with your roster. The problem with that is it kind of discourages growth, because a good chunk of this scene, especially at the high level, is just pickups right now. There's no actual team. So if you want to do a pickup, you are married. You are basically forced to be a project team for the entire month if you want to play in all of those tournaments. So that was frustrating for a lot of people. I understand why they did it, but it did lead to some frustration. Each tournament that Nintendo came out with had something about it that was weird, that drove conversation on Twitter. The Rainmaker one was, of course, the Splatfest tee heard around the world, where Arctic Moon wore the Splatfest tee, which was against the rules, and Pure Divinity took some free wins about it. I had an interesting kind of dialogue about that. I think both teams are in the right and in the wrong. Make sure I don't remember what episode number that was, but if you're curious about that, check that out. It was a good conversation about unwritten rules. The Splat Zone tournament went fine. There was no real complaints there, but the Splat Zone tournament was when most of the actual high-level competitive players started playing in the tournament, and I think that's why the conversation of, hey, wait a minute, this isn't a good format for determining a champion, started to take place. And that was really the only dialogue that happened after the Splat Zone tournament, was people was just like, wait a minute, you're giving out prizes for a ladder tournament that doesn't have a top cut, with the ladder is just all of it together. That's kind of weird. And to be fair, that does kind of make sense. In my mind, if I'm kind of going off tangent here a little bit, I think a 3-hour ladder with a top cut would have been a little bit better as far as determining a true champion. Ladder, as a lot of people kind of pointed out, can be manipulated and broken to work into your favor, and you can like legally cheat your way through a ladder if you knew exactly what you were doing. And as over the course of the series, people are starting to figure that out, which we'll get to. The Tower Control one, arguably the most ridiculous tournament, the most ridiculous single tournament ever in competitive Splatoon, is when Battlefy crashed. There was some other 1,000 team tournament in a different esport happening on Battlefy at the same time, and it caused the website to crash. Or at least that's the story. And what happened was the tournament turned into a best of one. I think there was one team that played technically 30 sets of competitive Splatoon in one 4-hour tournament. We wanted to play in the Tower Control one. We couldn't because, again, we were locked into 5 players. And we couldn't change our roster, and 2 people couldn't make it, so there was no way my team could play in that tournament. But I'm glad we did it now, because best of one Tower Control tournament seems like a total nightmare. But it was fun to see all the conversation on Twitter about that. That one's more Battlefy's fault. That's not Nintendo's fault. That one lands squarely on Battlefy. And that leads us to, as if I thought that couldn't be topped, leads us to the Turf War. The Turf War tournament to end all Turf War tournaments. The first and last one. The issue here being one team decided, hey, that rule about how we can't change teams, what if we just did that? Like, what if we just broke that rule and just like changed used like alt accounts and just go through that and see what happens? What are they going to do? Well, That team just so happened to be Elite Four, and they decided to do just that, going undefeated 14-0 per sets, and won the Turf War tournament. And it wasn't long before the Scooby-Doo team was able to unmask every single one of them, and we found out who all 4 of those players were for Elite Four, and recognized, hey, all of you cheated, or at least 2 of them did. Another one's banned indefinitely by Splat Safety, but still legal for Nintendo's tournaments because they don't care. So that happened. And of course, a couple weeks after that, we found out the conspiracy goes even deeper than that Elite Four team. Apparently, there were some other players trying to blackmail their friends into letting them create a fake team that was going to beat everybody in these tournaments, except for that Elite Four team. When they went up against them, they were going to purposely lose to help A, give losses to other teams, and B, give them a free win to help kind of secure the spot that team was going to win. That conspiracy didn't come to fruition because that fake team didn't actually happen, but instead, one of the players on that fake team did come out on Twitter and was like, I didn't know anything about this. I'm shaming the Elite Four players. How dare they do that? And I was like, oh, really? Wow. That you are shaming them. That I think we're starting to find out that's a little ironic. So that was the Turf War tournament. And it was just assumed, as it naturally should be, because all of us are in this competitive scene and we know how tournaments work. When you cheat, you lose. Everything is taken away from you. And good morning, the team that finished in second place, or I guess they finished in first place, not grand place, whatever, in that tournament, was going to be the rightful winner. And Good Morning looked like a pretty good champion. They were 12-0, including going undefeated in every single game they played. They were 24-0 in the Turf War tournament per game. So it's not like they were an undeserving champion at all. They literally did not lose at all. The reason they were not the first place team is because Elite Four clicked the button faster than Good Morning did. That's it. That's the only reason why Elite Four finished above them. They pressed the button 2 more times, which is another example of why the ladder tournament isn't the best. If there's no top cut at the end of the ladder stage, is the reason why maybe if you're going to hand out prizes, we should have some sort of tiebreaker for these guys at the top here where they actually play against each other. So that was all our assumption. Elite Four cheated. They're gone. Good Morning's going to get their prizes. Well, Nintendo, bless their hearts, decided, you know what? Before we hand out prizes to the teams that won this tournament, let's, as we're going out of our way to make that process as confusing and convoluted as possible, what if we just take the champions of all 4 of those tournaments and have them play against each other? Cool idea. Yeah, it's fine. That's a fine idea. I mean, it would have made more sense if they announced that at the very beginning that this was going to happen instead of just pulling it out of their ass at the end there, which is clearly what they did. However, instead of actually inviting the teams first to make sure they would want to play in this tournament, they decided to announce it publicly. Hey, everybody, we're hosting this block party, and only a certain number of people are invited. Well, hopefully those players can actually make it. First off, Starburst, they won. The Rainmaker won, and I think that I haven't looked at the actual rosters of who played in these tournaments here, but Starburst won, the Rainmaker won. You would imagine they'd be fine for that. Not FT Win won the Splat Zone one, and I can't remember the roster for that one, but that was obviously, I think that included, that might have included Bagel on that official roster. Obviously Kyo, I know because we played that team. But that roster is going to be a little bit shaky. That's not the actual FT Win team, but still good enough. Arctic Moon, oh my goodness, who knows who knows how that one's going to work out, because some of those players have left and from that was on that 5-player roster. So who knows with that. And now it turns out as we found out last week, the team that got invited from the Turf War tournament is not actually Good Morning, but instead was the Elite Four team that straight up cheated to win that tournament. Oh my goodness. I do want to point this out. Elite Four isn't going to play in this tournament. Like, there's no way they're going to play in this tournament. I've seen them announce, or at least I've seen one player publicly say, I'm not playing in this tournament because I don't want to play with these other players. And I'm going out of my way to let the TOs and Nintendo know that Elite Four is not going to play in this tournament, and we want Good Morning to play in that. Fair enough. That's fine. That's not my gripe with this situation right here. My gripe is that they got invited to begin with, and that shows a blaring issue. My issue is this. When I had Emil on for episode 50 of the Popcast, one of the topics that we talked about was Nintendo. And Emil brought up the point that Nintendo does not like it when people talk negatively about them. Well, it's a good thing they don't pay any attention to the competitive scene at all, because I'm going to do exactly that right now. Nintendo has zero connection to its target audience, which is the competitive scene. That's the biggest issue right here that's being blatantly made blatantly obvious over this past week. And, of course, several things leading up to this past week. Now, maybe you could say that the target audience is the casual crowd. And that's fair to say. Considering the vast majority of people that actually play in Nintendo tournaments are casuals that won't play in any other tournaments because they don't know about it, because Nintendo won't let us advertise our stuff in their server. Regardless, what we know, the actual competitive scene, what we actually know here is what Nintendo should have known all along, which is several of the rules that we've learned over the course of this tournament. Let me take a quick pause. The dog wants to be let out. Oh. What the dog doing? I don't know. He wants to leave. What is the first / most important rule of TOing? If we're all going back to the JPEG school of competitive tournament organizing, what's the thesis statement? What's the number one thing? You can't possibly want to be let in. He's going to have to wait. The number one thing that we all learned is this. You have to enforce the rules that are in your rule book. If you do not do that, you lose complete control of your tournament and all credibility that you have in your tournament as well. If you don't enforce one of your rules, and it is public that you don't enforce one of your rules, the next time somebody comes in the help desk and you are like, you can't do that, that's against the rules, they have a counter argument that cannot be disputed. Well, you didn't enforce the rule with that other team, so why would you enforce it with us? That's it. As soon as somebody makes that statement and they are right, you have failed. You have failed as a tournament organizer. That cannot be disputed because you are cherry picking what rules you want to enforce, which ones you don't, which leaves everything up to interpretation, and nothing can be verified. It's completely out in the water. So the fact that they are letting this team switch their players up and get away with it and still give them prizes, but they wouldn't let anybody else do that, shows that they just didn't take care of their rules. And they didn't follow through with the rules that they set in place. Unless it's the Splatfest tee. That's the one rule they did enforce that makes no sense. So that one gets, yeah, you can't wear the Splatfest tee. We're not moving off of that one. But if you guys do want to like switch up your rosters, that's fine. That's totally fine. Now, you could make the argument that Nintendo didn't know that since they're not invested in the competitive scene, that they weren't aware that the players that used alt accounts were actually players that had already played in their tournament with different teams. All they had to do was ask the people they have running the help desk, which are the people from the competitive community, and they would have told them straight up, like, hey, no, this is who these people are. No, they should be disqualified. They broke the rules. That clearly didn't happen here. Now, I don't know who's actually running these tournaments for Nintendo, but we do know the people in help desk are, like I said, are people from the actual competitive scene. There's something I do want to point out, though. The people actually running the help desk are not the ones calling the shots here. Now, you can't ask them that. And I had K-Bot on last week, and I purposely didn't ask him anything about Nintendo because there are, what is it, NDAs in place. Basically, they are like contractually obligated not to speak about certain things publicly about Nintendo stuff. However, just reading the tea leaves and from information I've gotten from my sources, which is always a credible thing to say, I get the sense that the people running the help desk don't get direct information from the higher ups. They find out things basically the same way we do. Oh, there's an invitational tournament. Oh, okay. And you're going to run it when? And who's invited specifically? And so it's clear that whoever's actually running this tournament isn't using the resources they have available to them. It doesn't even pay attention to Twitter. This is the most absurd thing. What was the ping that started Squid House at everyone due to unexpected executional challenges? We had to forego the stream for this tournament. What the hell do you mean unexpected? If anybody could remember the December tournament, what was the conversation for the 2 weeks leading up to it? It's that everybody was going to be changing their names to Free Melee, support Smash. We were going to go all out to support the competitive scene because they canceled Big House over their use of Slippy. That was the most public thing ever in the competitive Splatoon scene. Like, everybody and their mom knew about that. How could that be unexpected? How could you get through the latter stage of that tournament and have no clue? It just find out after the latter stage, oh, hey, all these guys are supporting Smash Brothers. That's really weird. That was unexpected. The only way that happens is if Nintendo, whoever's running these tournaments, just never goes on Twitter, doesn't follow anybody in the competitive scene, never just searches hashtag Splatoon2, never does any of that stuff. And that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for Nintendo to be this disconnected from the actual competitive scene. It just makes absolutely no sense. The level of absurdity here is insane. Oh, and by the way, yes, Splat Safety. Nintendo doesn't have to follow Splat Safety's rules. I understand that. I'm not griping about that, but it puts them in a spot to where their family-friendly facade that they're trying to put on here is going to be really jeopardized once they realize that they just invited Bliss to their invitational tournament. And if that was going to be streamed and the commentators were going to have to say nice things about that person, that would have been really embarrassing, because this is now none of us are perfect. I understand that. I'm a bit of a jackass myself. But one of the nice features I have going in my life is that I'm not currently indefinitely banned from the competitive scene for, quote, threats of harm, doxing, and directed slurs. That's who Nintendo invited to play in their tournament. Because, and they should have known. It's not a secret. If all you idiots in chat knew this was a thing and Nintendo didn't, that is a blaring problem. And it's so frustrating Because, and I've said this so many times, if Nintendo wanted to, they could overnight make this scene what we all desperately want it to become, an actual legit esport. They could do it. They have all the resources. But whoever is actually at the top running this thing is such an idiot that it's constantly just making the wrong decisions over and over again, that it's just not going to ever happen. And it's making the people run the help desk look bad, and it's not their fault at all. God bless them, because I mean they're just put out in a boat with no paddle and told, hey, get back to shore, and everyone's gonna watch you do it. If there was just some level of connection with the grassroots community scene, because we know how to run our tournaments. We know how to give out our prizes. We know how to advertise. What we don't have is the connection to the casual crowd. Because as we found out on Twitter yesterday, anytime any one of them complains about spawn camping, we're all just going to dogpile on it and be like, just suck it up, kid. You're going to get spawn camped to death. Which, by the way, I agree with. If ranked, if I'm trying to win, I'm going to spawn camp the crap out of you, especially if Nintendo's going to go out of their way to put Walleye Warehouse into the rotation. I'm just going to stand there at the edge with my Hydra, and there's next to nothing you can do about it unless you actually coordinate with your teammates. But we have driven the casual crowd away at every single opportunity that we can. Nintendo brings them in. If they had just had a little bit of connection, if they just peeked at Twitter every now and then, all of these issues could be fixed. Until that happens, we're going to have a Final Four with who knows who. Who knows if it's actually going to happen? Who knows if these players are actually going to play in it? If there's going to be another... There's not going to be... I don't think I'm breaking any news here when I say there's not going to be another Squid House situation taking place here. At least if there is... Again, I don't speak for IPL, but I'll sit here and say this. That there's like a 99.9% chance IPL is not going to hijack that tournament because we're not like that unless we are. Regardless, it's so frustrating. Everything I've seen about Nintendo is so frustrating. I guess that's just the thesis of that. Regardless, there's some other tournaments the grassroots community announced last week. Let's talk about that in the weekly recap. Maybe I should have just left that door open the whole time. There's a smoke detector that's needs a battery change, and I don't have that specific rectangle battery for it, so it's just beeping, and the dog doesn't like it, so he's just kind of a little antsy right here. Understandable. Hey, don't be messing with the adjusting the light here. Ludi announced that they are opening registrations on Low Ink Saturday for their 12th tournament of the year. That's a little very interesting. I didn't know Ludi. Well, I mean, I guess we all assumed Ludi was coming back. I didn't think it'd be coming back this quickly. Fair enough, though. I'll have more to say about that on Friday. I guess I didn't announce earlier, but the Friday, I will be doing an episode of the Popcast on Friday previewing Low Ink. We'll talk a little bit about Ludi this time, or at that time. A couple other tournaments were announced, though. Beta announced a 2-day tournament with a $500 prize pool, with the catch of this one being that you can only use weapons, maps, and gear that were available at the game from launch. I.e., the most important thing of that is you can't use K-Gal. There's some other things you cannot use. I didn't realize Brellas were not in the game initially at launch, so I guess you can't use Brellas. You can use V-Jet, though, and that is a bit of a concern, and people were pointing out, well, you can't use bomb defense because before it was just bomb defense and cold-blooded. They weren't combined together, so now I think V-Jet's going to be used pretty heavily because it is a very good weapon that used at the very beginning of the game. Spawn Point said, hold on, bro. You got a nice tournament but we got we got a bigger prize pool for our tournament. They have a $750 prize pool for their tournament that is a shopping system where you will spend some money to buy specific weapons. You have $20. Actually, we're going to take a look at this real quick because I do want to point something out. Or I do want to give my thoughts on this. So you have $20 that you can spend onto this tournament, and this is what you can build your comp with. Here's what I think the preferred strategy will be. And a lot of people, I'm assuming every single team went through this process as well. V-Dualies they're hidden behind the chat here, but V-Dualies are at this number 3 slot right here, this $3 slot. I think those are pretty underrated. I feel like at $3, you can build a nice comp around V-Dualies. Now, E-Leader down here. Yes, this version of E-Leaders can be kind of difficult because you do need to use your build to make sure your bubbles are good and your beacons have some sub power up to them. And you can't really do the quick pop bubble trick with the E-Leader, which is also why Cherry Ace 3 is down here at $2. But if you do something like that, that opens up the door for you to get an armor weapon in. And what's the best armor spamming weapon that we have right here? Probably this permabrush at $6. Now, Hydra is $6 as well. You can't spam armor with Hydra. You can use armor, yeah, but if you want to like keep your teammates constantly dripped in armor, this permabrush might be the right play. So if you do that, the permabrush, a $3 V-Dually, and then you want to get funky with this E-Leader right here, that's $11, and all of a sudden that opens up the door for you to get your K-Gal and your Splash in there. Saying, there are ways to work around that. There's some of these weapons at the bottom here that kind of work out. Even this Neo Luna got a little bit of a buff recently, and if Luna has enough paint, you can kind of make something work with that. And, well, if you want to combine it with the Splash. My point is this. When I looked at this initially, I was like, there's no way you can use a $9 weapon because it just completely blows your budget. But there are ways, as I'm looking at this, you can really work around this. And even one of my teammates, Z, was pointing out, hey, Cherry's really good because of the wall feature. And if you can hit shots with it, it works out. I don't know. $2, I think we might see some Cherries, but I don't think these two weapons are dead because of this. I feel like you can get around using these two weapons and combine them with some of this lower end stuff. On top of all that, though, here's my question. So the beta tournament currently has a $500 prize pool. The spawn point tournament has a $750 prize pool. These are called not meme tournaments. I think it's rude to call them meme tournaments, but they are gimmick tournaments. There is a little bit of a gimmick to them, which is fine. My question is this. Where are all the financial analysts that were complaining about IPL's prize pool distribution and were coming out and saying, here is why this is hurting the scene, that IPL is giving their money to the lower level brackets when it should be going specifically to these tournaments and these specific situations? Well, here, you got to combine $1,250 going into gimmick tournaments. Shouldn't people be complaining about that? That seems to fall into the rhetoric you were trying to push during the super jump thing. So that makes me think, well, wait a minute, maybe your outrage isn't consistent, and maybe you were just butthurt that low-level teams could possibly win some tournament prize money here. Oops. Plus server voting was released today. At this very morning. I did not realize that was the thing. But if you were, one tweet I always kind of look forward to is K-Bot's breakdown of the voting percentage that we have here. Let's see if we can pull that up real quick. As you can see, +2 went under a little bit of a purge this month, dropping 25 players, +1 added 1 player, and +3 added increased 6. So a little bit of steady growth and a little bit of downsizing across the board there as well. This is, I believe, one of the first times where this thing actually looks like a sort of pyramid. You got 75, 95, and 153. So it kind of works. Again, I've pointed this out before. I don't think it needs to directly be a pyramid structure because the more players you have in a specific plus server, the wider the skill gap is going to be. And at that point, it kind of loses some of its credibility. But still, I like looking at these numbers at least, so it's good to see things are happening. Plus one is actually voting a little bit more now. I believe this was below 50% before, but now it's actually up to 57. So a little bit more life being shown in plus one. A server I'll never be involved in, so it don't really matter to me. Tournaments: SOS 45. Memory faded in grand finals to Narwhal Gaming. Charger taking third place over Campfire there in the Great White Bracket. It's good to see Narwhal Gaming come back. I forgot they were a thing. But obviously came back here, kind of flexed on some people. And hey, you teams that are constantly normally winning these tournaments, just to let you know, there's still some monsters here. Narwhal Gaming like to show up every now and then and remind everyone that they still exist winning this tournament. Hammerhead was won by Tukey for a record 2,000th time. They have won Hammerhead bracket. Paint Plus hangs on to win a very competitive Mako bracket. And Sonaria wins Lantern in a very packed SOS tournament. King of the Castle 11 saw Mousetrap win over Mousetrap being the Sindao Taylor. I believe Kiver played for that team as well. I believe Brian was part of that. Wasn't easy for Mousetrap. Actually, Team took them to a Game 5 in winners bracket before losing to them yet again in the grand finals. Team Hum is made up of Pez Pop, Roundy. I wish my handwriting wasn't bad all the time. Miner, Thunder, Timmy Jr. And what other person? Eclipse. That's what that is. My E's look like C's sometimes. Third place went to a team literally called We Are Not Good With Names. Fair enough. Synops, Nishi, Trizzy, and Nepia were the team that finished up that third place spot there. Double elimination, Splat Zones only. 16 teams played in this EU-focused tournament. Ludi was announced during this tournament as well. Rams belittled the Giants 38-11. The Chiefs beat the Washington football team 31-13. And that was your weekly recap, sponsored by Diamond Matches. If you need something to light your candle with, make sure you light them with Diamond Matches. Green light. Extra thick for longer burn time. I don't want it to burn longer. I just want to light the candle and immediately put it out. In the United States since 1881, a proud supporter of my candle and a proud supporter of the weekly recap on the Popcast. Without further ado, the thing you are all here for. Welcome in. That's not ready for that yet. A pre-recorded interview with Hoeen Hero, who I guess I introduced in the video. So let's take a look at that. And I fixed the overlay at this time. It was the last time I did a recorded interview, the overlay was pretty bad. But I think we got the overlay right this time around. Welcome into the Popcast. Organization head for IPL and programmer / administrator for Pokemon Showdown, Hoeen Hero. Hoeen, how's morale at Inkling Performance Labs today?
We're actually doing really well today on that front. Everyone's been quite happy with how things have been going lately, and that's something I'm very grateful for.
Where did the name Hoeen Hero is Pokemon related, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's actually a misspelling of the Hoenn region, Hoenn. When I first selected a username on Showdown, I mistyped it and didn't notice for about 2 weeks till someone mentioned it. Then I tried to switch and that name was already taken, and my thought was, well, if it's already taken and I'm already am established with this name, I may as well keep it. And I haven't swapped to the other one because I could technically claim it considering my position at this point because I use that everywhere now, so I don't see a reason to change.
So instead of being Hoenn Hero like 624, you decided to just stick with Hoeen Hero for the
Yeah,
misspelling.
it's a bit unique, and it's always an interesting story when people ask.
Uh you were around for the first Low Ink, right? Like you helped form Low Ink at the very beginning.
Yes, me and Kraken Mare founded Low Ink and its predecessor.
What do you remember about the first Low Ink?
Well, the early days of Low Ink itself in general were just a very big learning experience because I had no prior tournament experience whatsoever running them, and Kraken only had a little bit. Um, but Low Ink itself was actually a rebranding of an existing tournament that I mentioned, which was called the Casual Splatoon Tournament. It was a tournament for, well, just casual play, and the reason we created it was because there was a room on Showdown, and there's chat rooms on there, and one was the Splatoon room. And the big reason that even exists is simply because of how many players moved from Pokemon to Splatoon when Splatoon 1 came out. There's actually quite a few. I even know some big names who swapped, but anyways, we wanted to create more events for that room because the room was starting to die off at that point, and we wanted to try to raise activity. So we created that. More specifically, I created it and dragged Kraken along with it against his will at first. Mostly only for the first few days. He really got into it after that. Um, but we tried doing that. Tournament didn't too well, honestly. The best run was when we had just a bunch of single people join up and we decided to do 2v2s, and it was a total of 9 teams. So you could say that that entire event was overall flop, but we did get some experience. But towards the end of that, we started to notice that we were getting more engagement, and towards the very end, only engagement from the actual competitive scene, and mostly low level people. So, based on feedback and from looking at the situation, because me and Cracker are like, this is not going to survive, we decided to move to catering to the competitive scene, specifically to low level teams. That's where the concept of low ink came from. Now, the first low ink is technically in August of 2018. However, I believe a major was running at the same time that we weren't aware of. I'm not sure how, but we weren't, and we only got one team signing up. Either that or it just word didn't get out. Only one team, so that got canceled. So that's not the first low ink as a result. Instead, that was September of 2018, hence why last year we celebrated low ink's birthday in September of 2019. And when we did that, how many teams did we get? I wrote this down. We got 6 teams to play, full teams of 4, to be fair, and it was a single elimination bracket. Um, so from that information, you could clearly tell we have grown a lot as organizers. We've switched to Battlefy from Challenge. We've switched to a proper format for low-level teams that can handle a lot more people and just gives people more playing time. Because single elimination, what, you're guaranteed 2 games. If you get O2'd, that's not good for low level, as we know nowadays. But hey, we all start somewhere. Same thing for any of you considering starting tournaments. We all start somewhere. Just take feedback from people and learn.
The team that won the first Low Ink is called Team E, and I had somebody DM
Uh-huh.
me some information. The reason they were called Team E is because they didn't put like an official team name in, so it
Huh.
just got generated since they were like the what E is the fifth letter. So they were the
Yeah,
fifth
they were the
team.
fifth.
So the challenge just made them Team E because of
I
that.
don't even think that was challenge. I think the reason it was Team E is because when we were the casual Splatoon tournament, I remember making all the teams Team A, Team B,
Hmm.
etc., and telling people, okay, if you want to change your name, let us know. And these guys were like, nah, we're good with Team E.
Gets
And
the
I think
job
then they
done.
came back during Low Ink as well and played then as well. So they just stuck with it.
I was at Riptide. I was talking with Bob the Hobo, who and I didn't know this, but he used to run a low level tournament back in Splatoon 1. I think it was like Young Ink or something like that. And he said one of
Heard of that name.
the biggest issues with running that tournament was that it was like impossible to verify everybody. Like
Oh
nowadays
yeah.
we have all kinds of resources that we can use to like FBI cross-examine every single person that signs up. How would you verify somebody back in the day for lowing?
Well, let me see here. It's been so long. I believe what we did in the beginning, let me go quickly pull the archives. I do have archives of all this stuff in the main server. Ah, yes, there we go. So how we did it back in the days, we used a Discord channel for each specific month. We only had one server, one tournament, so we just had an entire staff section. And what we would do is we would day of event or day before event, we would go through each team. We'd have all the staff members do that. That's more towards the later end. In the beginning, it was just me and Kraken, but it was also small, so manageable. We'd go through each one, each player, look at them, discuss if needed. If it's obvious, just permit them and give them a thumbs up. And later on, when we started getting people, try to cheat and such, we would also take screenshots of the roster and put them in another channel. So if we see, hey, you changed your roster, we can catch that. That was the early version of it, and then um, it didn't take too long for me to be like, this is taking too long, and I wrote a script with a Google document that imports all the team information from Battlefy when it's run, and then it just puts it all there, and we can color each player. Like this one's green, he's good. This one's yellow, we need to do more research. This one's red, they're banned, and so forth. And would also do things like cross players out who got kicked off of the team for whatever reason, move players to a different category when removed and whatnot to keep the whole thing clean and easy to understand for people working on that.
Yeah, I asked that because I know there's a lot of other low level tournaments, and I've always wondered how they do verification. I know we've helped out some other tournaments in the past, but it's like if we don't help you out, it's like okay, good luck with that. Um,
It's a lot of work, yeah.
it is, it is. Favorite low ink moment of all time for you?
I had to think between a couple things here, but I think my favorite one is actually not what you might expect. The second place was the Low Ink March 2021 incident, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. But the one that is my favorite is when we first got to 100 plus teams. So a touch of background on that. Um, Prior to 2020, all of 2019, we had about 25 to 32 teams for every single event. 12 months straight, basically static growth. No growth, we're just doing it. And that's not great on morale and such, obviously. We want to try to grow and improve and help the scene. We're doing our part, sure, but not much is happening there. In January, we hit 50, which was massive considering our prior growth. We hadn't grown, which was good, and we kept working harder because of that. We didn't, I don't remember the numbers for February and March, but it was not, it was around the same area. Never higher than 50 though. And in April, we hit 77, much to Kraken Mayor's joy, as you probably know. But again, we're very happy about that. That's also the point at which we had to, well, we didn't have to do that quite yet, but at some point we started to look at and go, what if we hit 128 plus? We don't have plans for that. That only happened once, which was a mess, but thankfully not happening anymore. But either way, April really encouraged everyone, and we kept moving from there. In May, it was quieter. I believe it was around 50 again, which is good, but not nearly as much as before. And in June, we were honestly expecting that cycle to continue. What I had seen as a cycle was we'd go up and then down and up and down, and no idea if we'll go up and stay or go up higher. I was honestly expecting June to be like 50, 40 teams, but June we got, I don't remember the exact number, but we had 100 plus teams. I know that for a fact. And watching the numbers go up, we all were watching these numbers go up, and we were all just shocked. That good way. We were very happy that we were getting that high, but it's like a dream come true, I suppose. You really want to help the scene. You want to make this big event, and we're finally there. And that also had a big impact on the community too. That's not something that was just whatever and only for low level. It had an impact on the community in several ways. For example, I remember looking at Twitter and around the community, and so many people were flabbergasted that Low Inc., a low level skill cap tournament, reached 100 teams in a single tournament. That's major territory. The only tournaments at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's still true. The only tournaments that reach that high are majors and, well, Low Inc. But um,
That's true.
yeah, I was pretty sure I was right, but just in case I wasn't aware of something. Um, so we tweeted out about that, celebrated for a bit, and all over Twitter. Previously, for the past, I don't even know how long, it was a while, people have been saying the scene is dying. There's not tournaments. People aren't interested in playing and whatnot. The game is dead. Um, and then we come out and we just say, hey, the scene's not dead. Look at all these low level people who want to play. You have a major level tournament that's a monthly. So that believe was the start of people to shut up about that, honestly, and actually push and move things forward. In addition, one thing you may not know, Low Inc. reaching 100 plus teams was one of the key catalysts for IPL's creation. I'll go into that more later, but Low Inc. was pretty critical for that.
Well, you talked about June being the first time where we reached 100. What do you think kind of led into that? Because there was two things that happened that June. First was that was the first tournament where we switched to the 2-day format. Um, and the other was that we were coming off the heels of one of the Nintendo tournaments that seemed to drive in a lot of casuals. Do you think it was just a combination of those two that really pushed Low Ink to the next level?
I think it was a combination of things, but I'm not sure about that first one. Nintendo, absolutely. I think Nintendo helped a lot then bringing in all those casuals. And where do they go for tournaments? Well, Low Inc. is the entry level tournament. Go play that. And I think a lot of those players have become serious parts of the competitive scene. They've grown, and some of them probably have even graduated. I'm not keeping track of who exactly, but yeah, as for the first part of us switching to a 2-day format, I agree that helped, but I'm not sure how much that affected the number count, because we wouldn't have swapped to a 2-day format, if my memory serves correctly, if we had not been getting so many teams and realized this is not feasible. Or maybe we did before that. If so, then yeah, that's true as well. My memory is a bit foggy on the exact timing and reasoning behind the 2-day swap. Um, yeah. And there was one other thing that I'm trying to remember. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Well, while you're trying
Eh,
to think of that, I feel like there was something else too, but I forget myself. But we're talking about how Low Ink has kind of grown. Did you ever think that it would get to the point to where it is now, where it is the biggest consistent tournament across the entire scene, regardless of skill level?
no, actually, I've never really thought at the beginning that it would get this big or be the central point for low level play in the scene. Um, for a long time, like I mentioned before, we were a very small event, just this 32 team. That's small overall, but it's not bad at all for a tournament, if I'm being honest. 32, there's a ton of tournaments that can struggle to get 8 or 16 teams, so 32 is not bad at all. Um, but yeah, getting really big was a big surprise, especially 100 plus. Oh, and that other thing I just remembered, COVID-19. Everyone's stuck
Oh,
at home. That
a
yeah,
captive
there's
audience.
this other big thing that happened. I wonder what it was.
It
Oh,
well, it's just weird to think. It feels like it's just been one giant year. Like I don't see any difference between 2020 and 2021 myself. So that's
yeah, I
why I'm
know.
kind of just like, oh yeah, that started around that time. Um,
Yeah, it's summer starting, COVID being around, all of that,
right.
all just lined up to
For
boost us.
me, it's like the seasons don't even change anymore. It's like Okay, now it's getting colder outside. But didn't we just do this? What happened to when it was hot outside? None of, like everything just bleeds together. Maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe that's the problem.
Nah, nah, nah. I agree with you. I'm in Florida, so it's just constantly hot here, so I don't even have that to help me tell the time.
Right, you don't get seasons. That makes sense.
We get
Uh,
rain and we get dryness.
where did the idea for IPL come from?
Well, there was three key things that assisted to IPL's creation and, the thought of creating it. One of which was Low Ink's success. As I mentioned, we wouldn't really have pushed IPL or anything if Low Ink was just a small thing. We wouldn't be in a position to do that. Um, Two other things helped create IPL, though. The first was the community's current condition. So, as mentioned, the community was kind of in a position where, well, there's not enough tournaments. The tour scene is dying, that whole thing. Um, so part of being in a leadership position like me and Kraken are in, is we have to look at the big picture of this whole scene. We have to see the scene from the top to the bottom, those who could potentially come in from casual and whatever else, any sort of external thing, even interactions with the Smash community, anything like that, whatever um, can get involved with the community. We have to keep a very big picture view there. And part of that view was just us trying to see, okay, what can we do to help this community? What does it need? What does it have? How can we fill those needs, etc. And as mentioned, the needs at that time were we needed more events, not locked to low skill level. Low ink obviously was very important, and we had zero intention of ever ending low ink. We still do not have an intention of closing low ink, even though there was jokes about that last month. Um, but we did know that we needed open level events or mid level, high level, etc. So that brought up the idea of creating an organization to run several events, including Low Ink. Low Ink itself would give us an extremely important thing to make that work: credibility with the community to kickstart this and an audience to present this to. Because if we're just completely unknown people saying, hey, we're starting 5 tournaments, that's not going to go as well as the Low Ink team saying, hey, we're starting more tournaments. Here's the info. Play. As we're, more trusted in that regard and such. That's just generally how things work. The other critical thing that influenced IPL's creation was actually a prior failed attempt to create an organization. We don't talk about this one much, and I'm not going to go into too much detail around it just because the whole thing ended very badly prior to a public announcement. That's one of the reasons we don't talk much, but I'll touch on it briefly here. Um, Simply put, several well-known groups got together. I'm not talking Endgame or Ink TV or anything like that. I'm talking individual tournaments. Got together to try to create an organization, and one of those was Low Ink. This gave us a foundation to start with IPL because we had all sorts of ideas and things worked out that would be needed for an organization already. So we had a foundation of some kind. Sure, that foundation needed work. Things needed to be changed and improved. There were some things we didn't personally agree with and we wanted to change. But things like the fact that I designed the mono server that IPL uses, where we have one server for our tournaments. You don't need to join 8 different servers to play in our events. You join one Discord server because I know a lot of people are at 100 servers. Just join that one, get the roles you want, and go. That kind of concept was from that original org. I don't remember if we agreed to implement that or ditch it or whatnot. It's lost to the sands of time, but that idea was initially created. And um, in addition, connections to other TOs were made there as well, which eventually led to some of those TOs becoming IPL, part of IPL's team that we have today and creating the new events that were founded with IPL, Swimmer Sync, and Testing Grounds. So that original org, while failed, is a very critical part of creating IPL.
It's that's interesting you bring that up, and I never knew about that honestly. Um, but I've been sort of calling for like these standalone tournaments to try to come together and make an org, just because the benefits of having like everything on one Twitch channel or everything under the same umbrella is so beneficial as opposed to just being your own standalone thing. Do you and it sounds like you tried that before IPL. Was the issue just too many different ideas and not everybody, like everyone having a different vision for what that org should be, and it just didn't align with everyone.
The vision was generally centralized, but there were some disagreements on things, and a very, very serious issue at the top as well that I don't want to go into for good reason, which resulted in the overall collapse of the entire idea. Otherwise, I think it would have probably succeeded if that problem didn't exist. Um, but in the end, it was definitely for the best that it failed. As for the other issues, there's disagreements. You're going to have disagreements. Even IPL has internal disagreements. It's part of working people. How you handle those disagreements is important. Is there a compromise you can make? Can you explain why you think your idea is better in a nice and kind way that makes sense to everyone, and then listen to the other person's side and be willing to compromise or change if you realize their idea is better? That kind of stuff is important.
Do you feel now that IPL is kind of the face of competitive Splatoon outside of Japan, do you feel pressure to for on IBL's behalf to be the leader in this community?
I don't know what IBL is, but for IPL, yeah, I do feel some pressure to be the leader of the community. With Endgame not really running online events anymore, and there not really being any other big orgs, Ink TV's been dead for a while. If anyone even watching this remembers, I'm not sure how many people from remember Ink TV at this point. We are the biggest tournament organization in the scene currently, and we do, excuse me, recognize that and want to handle that appropriately. We don't want to run around and abuse that or be dumb with it and lose the trust of the community or anything like that. We run all sorts of events targeted at specific regions and player groups and get high viewer counts on Twitch, which is spectators are very important, I will add, for all of them. And because we're viewed as the community leaders, we have to carefully consider what we do and how we do it. We can't make PR, public relation decisions, and suffer the consequences of that.
There's let's see, taking a snapshot of the scene right now. You got Dapple Productions that does a lot of EU tournaments and Squid Junction. You got Deep Sea Solutions that's trying. They have a couple of tournaments, but they're all just like once a month. It seems like. Uh, I think that's it. I mean, I guess you could consider Ludi an org, maybe. I don't know, but they don't really stream anything when they do stuff. Does it? Do you think it would benefit the community if some other org were to rise up and try to rival IPL, as opposed to the sort of monopoly that you have right now?
As much as I'd personally like IPL to be the king of the scene, I know that would be a bad idea. Monopoly like that, it just encourages less community growth and improvement. While I can continue to push that, if I ever go poof or anything like that, which, that's always possible to happen. I'm not saying die. I'm saying I have to go work somewhere else or something to be clear. Uh, if life gets in the way and such. But you just when you have a monopoly like that, it's very easy to just stick with the status quo and not push to continue to improve the scene, um, and do what we're doing now. Because we're the undisputed leaders, we can be selfish. No, I don't want that. However, a rival can also be bad, so it has to be a good rivalry, so to say. So, for example, if both sides are just trying to crush each other and become the undisputed leader, this can really harden the community since the focus on winning that fight at all costs and not helping the community. Don't want that. I will have no part in anything like that. However, if it's a proper rivalry where both sides are trying to improve the scene, they're willing to work together. Okay, we'll take this date for our event. You'll take that date. We'll, even like advertise one another at times, or even if they don't want to do that, that's fine. But if we just work together to improve the scene and have a friendly rivalry as a result, that's great. It encourages each other to improve because when one side fails, the other side can use it as motivation to not screw up, and the side that failed can see the other side doing well as motivation to fix things. Anything like that in general.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would. I feel like Dapple Productions is on its way to becoming that. I feel like they're starting, or they did have like a week where they started absorbing some of these other smaller tournaments and adding to their brand. And yeah, I think it would be obviously be beneficial, but I mean, for right now, it is pretty much IPL and whatever other tournaments just kind of happen to take place at the same time. I don't want to look. I've been talking about Super Jump for the entire month on the podcast here. I don't want to talk about it every single episode like it's some sort of high school memory that I just keep going back to. But since this is your first time on, what were your thoughts of how Super Jump went from your perspective?
Overall, I think it went well. It was very stressful for me personally because I missed the early parts of planning because I was focused on school. So I was taking a bit of a leave of absence and I had to catch up on everything as we went through this. Um, and then day of event arrives and we all know what happened with Wave A. Um, I go to start the bracket, start Wave A, and it throws an exception. Site literally won't work. So we get Vincent on the phone, and I have to go tell everyone, hey, the site's broken. That was an interesting 15 minutes to say the least. The first 5 minutes was seeing, can we get this working? Okay, I don't know. Let's move to the next step. The next 5 minutes was me coming up with an entire contingency plan to run this tournament by hand, and then the next 5 minutes was me starting to implement that. I don't know if you saw me start to create those extra channels and whatnot on day of event, or no, you were playing in Wave A,
I
weren't
was
you?
playing. I was one of the people wondering when the idiot TOs were going to start the tournament.
Well, you could talk to the Smash GG support team about that.
Who made the
But after
phone call to Smash.gg? Was that you or Vincent?
Vincent made it from a Starbucks because he was visiting another city. He wasn't even home. He TO'd for like 4 hours on his laptop in Starbucks.
Phone
He was the one
call.
who did the initial setup with them and has the connections. So,
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
but nobody expected that for him to happen. He wasn't even supposed to be doing any sort of TOing for Super Jump because he was supposed to be on vacation or whatever he was doing there. But yeah, things happen. In
Uh,
the end, we just removed the automatic progression, which was the big reason for using Smash GG, just to get the event started and did everything by hand, anyways. So, not fun. But other than that, it was good overall. We got a lot of positive feedback, a lot of people saying it was a great event from all skill levels. The format was good, and I know low level is like complaints saying day one was hard, and like I understand that, but for an open level event like that, I can't really do too much about day one. You're gonna have to sometimes play teams like FT Win. My suggestion is just take it and see what experience you can gain from that. And if that's nothing, I'm really sorry about that, but at least you'll be able to get into a more balanced bracket for the next day, which, based on feedback, it was pretty balanced overall
you
on
know,
day two.
my experience playing teams against teams like FT Win and Starburst are they want to get it over faster than you do. Like they just like, hey, give me your friend code. We have the room up. Join it now. Let's just get this over with. So I some people have seen that as rude, like they're not super friendly. I appreciate it because I understand. Hey, they want to get to better matches themselves. Did
You can see it
you
both way, yeah.
did you get could you share one feedback that you got that you felt was fair and would help shape Super Jump 2 that you didn't really think about?
Well, there wasn't really any massive feedback that stuck out at me. Like the majority of the feedback was do not use Smash GG ever again. Which was my initial reaction too, but
That might have been me.
internal discussion is more on the fence. We need to do testing. We probably need to run a UT before we touch anything with Smash GG again, just to test the kind of system again to make sure it works on their end, to test their website to make sure it works. Because I am not doing that again. But the biggest feedback we got was contingency plan setups, and I actually wrote a document which you can access yourself if you want, Pop. It's in the um, IPL folder. it's for contingencies. I do have to write one other part of it, but it's basically what happens if a tournament website goes down. What do we do? We never really had any of that written down, so we had to go and scramble whenever it happens, which I think is once or twice it's happened in a couple years, but
It
it
happened at
always
a
happens
low
during tournament
ink.
day.
It
Yes, it
happened.
did happen during a low ink. We also had a Discord outage during a different low ink. So lots of fun and thrills on those fronts. Contingency planning is part of it. But rest assured, we have a contingency plan now, and we will definitely make use of that if something weird happens next time. Even if we're using Battlefy or something next time, there's always a chance that goes down instead, and then next time we say don't use Battlefy ever again.
Mm-hmm. And then we're running tournaments
Come on,
off of challenge,
please no.
or it's just an
That's the
Excel sheet.
challenge is already the contingency plan, or write the brackets out on a piece of paper.
That
You
works.
can't take away my paper. If the whole internet goes down, though, I can't fix that. Sorry, guys. Tournament's over.
Well, that once they finish that giant wire from through the center of the Earth, and get a direct connection with Japan and Australia, then everything's just going to be fine then. Uh,
Yeah.
how many different people would you say have come to you or IPL after the success of Super Jump, trying to like pitch their ideas of tournaments that they want to run?
Not as many as you might think, really. I think it's people are just afraid of approaching IPL because of how big we are. As I honestly can't think of. Well, we had one person suggest a Turf War event in the public server, but I can't think of anyone who's come privately to us. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. So as a result, for anyone watching this, go ahead and send in any feedback you may have for IPL, whether it's just ways to improve, any ideas you may have. And we can't promise we'll do anything. Like if we get a ton of suggestions, we absolutely can't do all of them. We're happy to listen to your proposals, especially if you're willing to work with us or otherwise provide some sort of resource or support to help make whatever you're proposing happen. Your proposals don't even have to be new tournaments. Helping the community is not just tournaments. Content creators like Vicvillian are very important to this community. They focus on more casual audiences, and that's very important. We need that group to be catered to as well, and that can bring people into competitive as well. So, some sort of a proposal to work with IPL, that's great. Even if it's just not a proposal to work and just something you want to suggest, go for it. My DMs are always open.
The question everybody wants to know the answer to, and it seems like it's a foregone conclusion that this is going to happen at some point. So you might as well spill the beans now. When is the IPL land going to take place? When can I purchase my tickets to that?
It's next week in Alaska. See you then. Um,
There we go.
in all seriousness, lands are extremely expensive. We're talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Super Jump was a $3,000 prize pool. You need a lot of those to run a land. So that just gives you a general picture. So clearly, an IPL land is not feasible currently. The only way an IPL land would be feasible that I could see to avoid that cost would be if an established event like Genesis wants to have IPL run Splatoon at their event. That is an interesting concept, and if we got approached by that, I would be willing to listen and consider. There's obviously a million different things to consider at that point, but I'm not going to start theory crafting on that. Um, but regardless, there's still some barriers there. First off, that would still be expensive because you need equipment for lands to work, and we don't have any equipment right now. In addition, staff do not teleport to the event. They have to fly, they have to eat, they have to stay in a hotel room. We have to pay for them to come here. Ideally, we can pay for them to come here because if they're just going to be there working most of the time, it's kind of mean to ask them to just pay their own way there too. So that would be ideal. Um, but of course, that's not as important as equipment in the end because you can run a LAN with staff who aren't being paid if they're willing to do that, but you can't run a LAN without the equipment needed to run a LAN. Um, Not to mention that IPL itself has no experience running LANs. That's a very different beast, and it's like saying uh, to me when I first started running the casual Splatoon tournament, "Hey, go run this major event." Yeah, no, we would need help. Um, But yeah, overall, do we want to do a LAN? Yes. But I have no idea when that will even start to be materialize, and we have not had any sort of internal discussions to create a LAN of any kind. So sorry about that. There's no LAN planned.
Hey, I hear Alaska's lovely this time of year. Like, I don't think it'd be good for the winter, but if we're going in right now, I think we could get it done.
Isn't it October? That's pretty close to winter.
It's close. Close, but not just there yet. Um, Splatoon 3 is supposed to come out sometime next year. We have no idea when. I'm assuming quarter 3 or quarter 4, or else they would have already kind of said, "Hey, look out, summer or early
Yeah, that's my
2022 or
concern.
something like that." But whenever it comes out, where would you like IPL to be? Like, what do you envision IPL being by the time Splatoon 3 comes out?
Well, I would like to see IPL catering to the entire existing community because this community, for the most part, is probably going to move to Splatoon 3, so still the whole community. And I want to see us prepared for a game transfer, a Splatoon 3 transfer, which is something that I do need to actually start working on here. Um, again, we don't know when the release date is, but it's better to be prepared than to be panicking at the last minute. So for the community, currently there's some parts of the community that we feel desperately need support from TOs, and we're working on that. I have no further details on that, but I promise you we are working on stuff as usual. We always have something up our sleeve. Um, in addition, a switch between games is going to be a turbulent time for many reasons. The meta is completely scrambled. People have to go buy the game again, so some people will be able to play, some people won't. People are figuring everything out. Ranks are wiped. The whole skill level thing could be somewhat scrambled. It's a turbulent mess. Um, we need to prepare IPL for that and its events. I know Low Ink is probably going to be a good chunk of work to figure out the details of how exactly it's going to work, but I promise you, maybe we don't run it for a month or something. That's technically a possibility, but I'd like to run it in Splatoon 3 right away as well. Um, but we'll see. Again, it's a lot of discussion that we just haven't had any of it yet. So I can't promise anything or give any details of what we're going to do, but we'll get prepped. I don't know, and it also depends on what Nintendo says about the game, because if they say something really weird like, um, I don't know, you have to be rank, I don't know, A plus or higher to play private battles. Now, I'd be shocked if that was a thing. That's kind of stupid. But if they said something like that, that would affect how we have to handle things, you know? Um, yeah, so that's the overall event. I plan to definitely start the internal discussions on a move to Splatoon 3 here very soon.
Go ahead and plug yourself. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about IPL or Pokemon Showdown?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at times. I don't tweet a lot. I've been doing it a bit more lately, but on there you'll see me talking about mostly Splatoon, sometimes Showdown, especially when there's outages, because I'm either doing development work and you won't hear me talking, or I'm doing public relations and I will be talking there, trying to keep people from panicking. But that's at Hoeen Hero, Hoeenhero. I'm mostly on Discord, so you can contact me there anytime. I'm of course in the IPL public server, and if you're staff or on the production team or commentating, you can find me in those respective servers. And if you just need my tag, it's again same thing, Hoen Hero, Hoeenhero, with the H is capitalized, and the four numbers are 5770. Um, than that, I don't really use a lot of social media. I guess I have a Twitch, but I don't stream much anymore, and that's usually going to be programming. But if you want to watch that, it's again same name, Hoenn Hero. If I do start that up again.
Hohen, thank you for taking time out of your Monday, October 18th, to talk to us here on the podcast. I feel like a lot of people haven't heard your voice before, and I think it was good to get for people just to hear who one of the heads of IPL is, so that it can they can kind of put a voice to the face that they see telling them things in help desk all the time. So, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Go play your matches.
Man, I looked dead. I was very sluggish during that. That was kind of weird. I believe that was recorded at like 10 a.m. It was just the time that it kind of worked out, and yeah, I don't really have the same energy. The energy that I had in the earlier segment leading into that one didn't really translate over, which is fine. I like that's the second time I've pre-recorded an interview and played it. I feel like that should be more. I feel like I might want to do more of those. I found it's a lot easier. There's a lot of people I want to talk to, but they're just not always available live. But it's like if I can start doing those recorded things, then we can start talking to more people and getting them onto the podcast without having to. Okay, well, let's make sure your schedule aligns perfectly with mine, and you can come on live and things like that. So, regardless, good little chat there with Hoeen. I will be back Friday. There's going to be a second episode of Popcast this week on Friday. We're going to talk about Ludi coming back, but more importantly, we're going to preview Low Inc., including a top 10 team. The top 10 teams, I think, are likely to win this upcoming Low Inc. With that being said, we're going to call it a day here. It's a rather lengthy episode. If you'd like to be a part of the podcast in any way, feel free to reach out to me at my socials below. Twitter at Mr_Popgun, Discord Popgun, hashtag 5882, YouTube at 25Popgun, Twitch at Popgun25, Anchor.fm/Popgun. We're going to raid Kiver. Get vaccinated if you haven't already. Keep wearing a mask. Don't do stupid stuff in the future. Do not die between now and Friday. Please.